views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try.
This is Patty Hunter. Welcome to my show. It's a special one today here on Skype. My special guest is Robert Colquhoun, and he is from all the way from England. So he is also the International Outreach Director of 40 Days for Life, and we'll be chatting all about 40 Days for Life, how it is internationally, and how we are here to help others, especially our unborn and our newborns as well. We're going to discuss everything under the sun about abortion and how we're trying to save our children through prayer, vigils, as well as having counselors. We're going to do the history of abortion. We're going to do the history of why the death culture is in existence this generation. So we have a video that's coming up, and it's called 40 Days for Life, which was done on October 2015. I'll see you back in a moment, and we'll be chatting with Robert himself.
The 40 Days for Life Autumn Initiative to End Abortion is currently underway. 40 Days for Life is a community-based campaign that involves prayer and fasting, constant vigil outside abortion clinics, and community outreach over a 40-day period. The campaign takes place in 307 cities around the world, and since it began in 2007, more than 10,000 lives have been saved. And these volunteers at this vigil outside the Mary Stopes Abortion Clinic on Whitfield Street in London explain why this initiative is so important.
I know that the vigils work because many women have changed their minds and have decided to have their babies, because for them, prior to us offering them help, there was no alternative.
It's very good because many lives has been said, and many friends I have had these babies and were very happy after the baby were born, and we're all very happy that they're in our lives as well.
We're trying to encourage pregnant women to choose life for their children. There's a lot of grace that God gives for those who get involved because this is very important work.
We need as much support as possible because these are the babies that you'll never hear their cry. You know, nobody will see these things. They're behind the walls of this building.
The vigil on Whitfield Street is coordinated by the Good Counsel Network, which provides ongoing support for women facing crisis pregnancies.
We see hundreds of women every year who've chosen life for their children through coming to us and being offered help and support. And in the last couple of years, we've seen 230 women who have come to us for practical help and support after changing their mind at the clinic vigils. So we know that they're really important, and we know that many women do feel that the vigils are helpful to them. So that's one thing that keeps us going there. Sometimes when we see women who've had an abortion, they'll say to us, why was no one there when I went in? And we don't want any woman to have to say that she's gone into an abortion clinic, not been offered real alternatives there, and had nobody waiting, offering her anything else on the doorstep of the clinic either. So for us, it's really, really important to keep up that presence and to keep up our work of being able to support women through crisis pregnancies.
And one of the many good news stories of impacted lives through this campaign is that of Polish single mother Barbara. She explains the moment she changed her mind about having an abortion after meeting one of the 40 Days for Life volunteers.
I was 7 weeks pregnant with twins when I went to abortion clinic in Ealing Broadway to have an abortion, and I met Rachel in front of the clinic. Rachel is now one of my best friends. She was the one who
helped me realize that this is not really what I wanted to do. They helped me to sort out my accommodation. I think that was my main concern when I got pregnant, that I had really nowhere to go, that I wouldn't be able to work, that I wouldn't be able to cope really with 2 children on my own. So they really helped me to understand that even being a single mother is not the end of the world. Well, my children, they are such a joy, and they changed me a lot, they changed my life a lot, and it was so worth it. And I can't really imagine now that they wouldn't be here.
And Claire McCulloch concludes by explaining how people can continue to support this vital work.
Well, Good Counsel is based in the heart of London, and we need people to come and pray. We need people to provide ongoing support with the mothers and friendship, and sometimes to accompany them when they go to have their babies. We receive baby goods and baby clothes. So in those ways, financially, we always need support. And we need volunteers to come to the 40 Days Vigils. We're helping to run some of these vigils now. We're running a vigil at Whitfield Street in central London. And we need people to come to help us fill that vigil, mostly during the month of October. But all year round, we have 3 vigils that take place at Twickenham, at Ealing, and also the central London, Mary Stopes, Whitfield Street. So they can find details on our website, which I think you'll be giving the details of there. So there's lots of ways that they can help. Anybody can help our work, either from home, through prayer, or volunteering, or donating.
So, Robert Colquhoun,
Yeah.
and you are the International Outreach Director of 40 Days for Life. Whereabouts are you now?
Well, I'm based in London in the United Kingdom.
Where you were born in England then?
That's right, I was born in Oxford, England. I'm 33 years old. I'm married with an 18-month-old daughter.
Oh, congratulations.
Expecting another one in January as well.
Hey, that's great. 2 of them. May it be a safe, wonderful, beautiful blessing of a birth.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, were you pro-life when you were a kid?
So I went to an Anglican boarding school when I was growing up. I went to Oundle School, and grew up as an Anglican. When I was at university, I became a Catholic over 11 years ago. So I was very inspired by Pope John Paul II. Was certainly a really big influence and a big inspiration, along with a number of teachers at my school. I studied history at university in London, so I wasn't pro-life at a very young age. It was really much more university and later that I really begun to see the issue as much more of an importance, and certainly at school I didn't really consider it much of an issue, to be honest.
So what changed your mind? What changed it for the better?
Well, I think certainly 11 years ago I had a strong desire to take my Christian faith seriously and to start practicing, and I became a Catholic at that time. And it was, I think I was always a Christian, but I had a strong desire to really take my faith more seriously. It was a journey from the head to the heart, and it was reading Faith and Reason, seeing the relationship between philosophy and theology, seeing that you can come to faith by reason, and also seeing through history the importance of Christianity in our country as well, historically.
Right.
How faith has been absolutely vital to the faith of Britain. So those kind of an intellectual conversion. That's really what got me interested in Christianity. And then from Christianity, I've really become much more interested in the pro-life movement over the last 5 to 10 years or so.
So this video that we had shown previously before we started chatting, tell me more about it, where the 40 Days for Life, October 2015, it was taped on, right?
That's right. Well, there was a young woman there who had twins, who is a testimony. She met one of the counsellors in West London during one of the vigils that we had there, and we've seen several hundred women who were scheduled for an abortion choose life for their babies in the United Kingdom alone since we started 40 Days for Life about 5 years ago. So we've seen tremendous blessings, and it was just an example from this autumn one of the 40 Days for Life campaigns that was happening in London. So we've had over 10 campaigns in London so far, and we've now had over 20 locations around the United Kingdom that have taken part in 40 Days for Life. It's been a really beautiful campaign, and we've seen so many lives changed. We've seen so many people impacted at the very last minute through God's grace, through the excellent work of many volunteers, and through the courageous decision of many women who are choosing life for their babies instead of having an abortion. So it's been a great campaign in the United Kingdom. It's a very secular country, England. Not many people go to church here, but it doesn't mean that God can't work powerfully through the prayers of individual Christians and through community organising as well. So I started the first 40 Days for Life campaign in September 2010. It's now been 5 years since that first campaign, and we've seen so many blessings, and now internationally as well. So I'm in awe of what God is doing in and through this movement, and I really look forward to hearing more stories of lives saved and hearts and minds inspired, and look forward to what God has in store, not only for this country, but across the world as well.
Well, we have an organization called Allen County Right to Life here. And they have been working with the law, the lawyers and stuff, to legally go after the abortionists. We've been praying for the abortionists as well as their staff and nurses. We finally, had a chance to get the guy out of Fort Wayne. He was also going out to South Bend, which is up north near the border of Canada.
Yeah.
And that's been closed down as well, eh? But there's still a lot of abortion clinics here in Indiana and throughout the United States and Canada.
Yeah.
And I noticed with my country, where I'm originally from, Canada, they are really gung-ho with the abortion,
Yeah.
I mean, they are even forcing the nuns of certain hospitals who run the hospitals, the nurses, and they were forced to make abortions in their own hospitals, and the church was fighting against that. I haven't heard anything more about it and how they're coping with the Canadian law. You been to Canada?
I have been to Canada. I spent a year in Canada working with a youth ministry, Net Ministries, in 2008 to 9.
Right.
So I have spent a year there. It's a very beautiful country.
Have you?
Very similar to the United Kingdom, very secular, liberal values in the country, and I think that's a challenge for many pro-lifers because where do you start when the laws are so they really don't have a clearly defined law in Canada on abortion, and it's really a free reign in that regard. So, and also with the election of Justin Trudeau recently, he's one of the most liberal politicians in the country. So there are many challenges, and it's very tempting for many pro-lifers to lift up their arms and think, Lord, what can we do in these difficult circumstances? I also met Mary Wagner in London last year when she travelled to the United Kingdom.
Right.
So she has been a prisoner of conscience. She has been arrested a few times for her peaceful protest against abortion as well. So it's very frustrating in those circumstances. What can we do? But we have found a methodology in this country that has at least able for Christians to respond to the crisis of abortion and get people involved with pro-life activities for the very, very first time. But with the underlying current of secular values, it's a very difficult ground in order to do pro-life work. But we have seen considerable spiritual fruit, certainly in the United Kingdom, and I know the 40 Days for Life campaigns in Canada, they have seen serious spiritual fruit as a result of their efforts, and it's very much being against the culture and challenging, presenting a different message there as well. So
we're fighting against the death culture, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. So,
if you don't like something, you destroy it.
Yeah, so that's right. The cultural situation is frustrating, and it's very similar in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. We all are in liberal democracies which have very liberal abortion laws. Certainly in the United States, it's really up to birth in many states, and the same in the United Kingdom on grounds of disability. Likewise in Canada as well. So the problem is that there's very little political angle to come into the debate to make significant changes. That young people are being promoted a message which would make them more favourable to a pro-abortion position, usually in schools as they're growing up. Likewise, many of the churches have been apathetic and indifferent on abortion as
We
well.
have to work on them.
Pastors haven't spoken up on this truth, and this is the cultural ground in which many of us have to work in, and that's very, very challenging. But turning to God, turning to prayer, turning to fasting and prayer, that's when we can see how God has been working in and through the hearts and minds of many individuals to bring about His will and bring about a change from a culture of death to a culture of life. For in many ways, the pro-life scene is in the wilderness, just like Moses at the moment. 40 years in the wilderness, and we need to come out from the wilderness into mainstream culture, into mainstream thinking, into the re-evangelized countries, and to help people, educate them that killing unborn children is not something that civilized countries should be doing. And I really hope that the pro-life movement can make huge developments, huge grounds, and huge further movement into mainstream society to help present the pro-life position right throughout society, throughout schools, throughout hospitals, throughout education, throughout politics, throughout mainstream culture, so that people can understand and have an understanding of the beauty of every unborn child.
So since 1973 with Roe versus Wade, I know abortion has been going on for thousands of years in different cultures, civilizations and stuff, but I thought with our civilization, quote unquote, we are more humane. I noticed that animals are getting more humane treatment than the actual human being. Have you noticed that in your country?
Well, certainly in England, we've had a lot of debates about fox hunting, up to like 500 hours of debate in the Houses of Parliament, whereas debate actually specifically about abortion has been very, very restricted, and just a few hours have been debated on this topic as well. So someone like Peter Singer would be a strong advocate of animal rights, to the detriment of human rights. But I'm sure most people aren't in a position where they are advocating that animals have more rights than humans. But it seems just bizarre that in our country we have failed to recognise the humanity of the unborn child in such a brutal and callous way over the last 40 years. We've respected the right to life for centuries in this country, in the defence of the 1861 law is still part of the UK law. So abortion is still a criminal act in the United Kingdom. The Defence of the Human Person Act in 1861 means that it is still a criminal act. However, doctors are immune from prosecution from the 1960s legislation that was introduced and amended in 1990. So I would really love to see our culture return to, now that we have science and technology showing ultrasound, showing pictures of babies in the womb that can really help demonstrate the humanity of the unborn child to many people, even of some of whom don't have religious persuasion, that the technology is there to show that what is human is human, and that we were all an unborn child at some point in our lives as well.
We all started out the same way,
Yeah, I think the more we can build a growing awareness of the humanity of the unborn child, the more we can enlighten people's consciences and really put two and two together. That I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about the issue of abortion very deeply. That because the unborn child is hidden in the womb, that it's easy to forget what is happening with regards to the violence of abortion. And I think the more that we can, bring awareness, understanding, and also get people to think critically about the issue, the more we can help change hearts and minds in this cultural battle.
Do you find more people starting to be more conscious of the human being? Just recently I noticed that over here. We're fighting for the lives of our babies. And I find that sad, and yet I find it glad that people are starting to say, this is wrong. What are we doing to our own kind, you know? We're killing ourselves off, you know, throwing God's gift right back into his face. He gave us life. Why should we start killing our own? Especially, you think the babe in the womb will be safe, but it's not. It's the worst place to be in some places, you know?
That's right. Well, certainly in the United Kingdom, with the release of a lot of the ultrasound pictures in 2007, I think that did have a change in a small number of people's mind, that they could really see that it was a human being and make that connection intellectually, that an unborn child is a human being. And certainly in America, a lot of young people are becoming more and more pro-life, which is encouraging. You know, logically it makes sense that people who have abortions are less likely to reproduce, you know, making a change of public opinion, you know, likely over time. But still, I think we've got a very, very long way to go in this country. You know, the very secular, liberal mentality does predominate in many, many ways. But I don't think that's a cause for lack of hope. And I think that we can see great changes over, you know, a small amount of time. We've seen, you know, social movements change very, very, very quickly in this country. And a small, well-organised group of people can actually bring about a huge amount of change. You look at William Wilberforce, who helped to abolish slavery. It took him nearly 40 years, but you know, he was a courageous person who never stopped at doing good and was relentless in his campaigning. So I think with good, well-organised campaigning, we've got social media and new technology that can help accelerate things as well, that we can see significant progress. But I think the context of the problem of abortion is that it's a problem of the family, that people are much more likely to have abortions
dysfunctional
when they're not married, when they don't have family support, when there's not a husband or a man willing to support a woman in a pregnancy. And most abortions are unintentional from the beginning. People don't necessarily go out to go and get pregnant deliberately so they can have an abortion, that they find themselves in a situation that they didn't intend themselves to be in. And it's in the context of their family. When we have a culture of the family where family life is respected, where marriage is cherished and respected, then that's going to be much less likely that people are going to find themselves in a surprise or an unexpected pregnancy that they didn't think that they would necessarily be in themselves. So I think when that culture of family really develops, I think the abortion rate will plummet. And you know, the abortion is very closely related to promiscuity. It's also closely related to the contraceptive culture, in that's really the source of so many of the problems. And you know, when we live in a society that cherishes marriage, cherishes families, that's when the abortion rate will plummet. Because
so we have to change. We have to educate the people all over again, because this me generation since the 1960s, when they start turning hippies and all that sort, it's my sex life and that no one else has choice of my body and all. That's how it grew. And it went real big in Toronto itself in the 60s in Yorkville. And that's where they had Mayo clinics doing the abortion as well, saying it's just a blob of tissue, it's not really a baby, it's okay, but there's a lot of wounded women out there and their families since they've had abortions, and it's tough to be able to have them say, this is what I did to my own child. It's how am I going to get closure? Because they're not allowed to talk about it, because it's supposed to be taboo, really, to say, this...
The pro-life movement is a movement of converts, and many post-abortive men and women have been some of the most powerful and strongest advocates for life. And when they've experienced the mercy, healing, forgiveness and reconciliation with God after an abortion experience, some of them have been the most powerful and some of the strongest voices for the pro-life movement. So very much in Britain as well, there's a culture of shame, of secrecy, of privacy surrounding the abortion issue. It's a cultural taboo. But God can really penetrate and break through those cultural barriers And for many people, regardless, it doesn't matter who you are, what you've been, what's happened in the past. What matters is what God can do in and through the witness of your own life, and He can transform anything for good. And I think one of the most beautiful things about the pro-life movement is finding healing and forgiveness for post-abortive women who've had abortions. That's not the end part of the story. And I think for many people, the pro-life movement is good news. It's a message of hope. And yes,
Forgiveness.
It is killing an unborn child, but
Yeah.
we believe in a God of mercy and forgiveness as well.
Right. Do you find a lot of atheists being pro-life as well, or just Christians?
Well, we have a lot of Christians in our movement here because it's largely a Christian organisation that we're running, and it's a movement. And there are atheists who are pro-life. There are quite a number, and there are quite a number of atheists in the UK. But we've really found the people who to be most passionate about this issue have, on the whole, largely come from a religious background. There are some very good, secular people who are pro-life as well, but really within the community and organisation which I'm largely involved in, it's largely been Christians who've been they've been the ones willing to sacrifice their time, talent, and treasures towards this cause. That's not a disrespect to anybody who doesn't come from a Christian background.
Right. You have been all over the world?
That's right, yes. I've really had the privilege over the last 3 years to visit about 15 different countries who have conducted a local 40 Days for Life campaign. So it's really been a real treasured work and front row seat seeing God's grace in action. And some of the most exciting countries I've seen have been Croatia, where we now have 20 cities who are organising 40 Days for Life campaigns. They've seen a whole classroom of children, I think 27 children in total, who have been spared from abortion as a result of the initiative started there, which has been running just for 2 years as well. So that's been a really amazing experience to go there twice, and it's a very beautiful country, rich Christian heritage to the country, very young as well, following the Yugoslav war. So that's been a huge blessing visiting Croatia. We've just had our first 40 Days for Life campaign in Colombia, in South America. 2,000 people were involved. They saw 12 women choose life for their babies. There's actually about 60 abortion centres in the capital in Colombia, would you believe, very close to where they've been praying. And there's so much good that can be done in these communities. So they've had an absolute textbook campaign there. It looks like many of the Latin American countries are going to join 40 Days for Life in the very near future. So we could get the whole of the Latin American region signing up to run their own 40 Days for Life campaign. So I'm very, very excited about that. And it's a huge development, the biggest since I've been in this role for 3 years as well. Well, I've also been to Nigeria, where abortion is illegal, up to 14 years in prison. The law largely isn't enforced. I've met some of the babies that have been spared through pro-lifers' work in that country, in Abuja, the administrative capital. And they've managed to save over 20 babies from abortion through the pro-life organisation set up in that country as well. So despite the fact that abortion is illegal there, it's still going on, very widespread and undercover in society.
Sad, really.
Abortion pills. So it's been absolutely fascinating seeing different countries like Brazil. I went to Brazil last year. Again, abortion is largely illegal apart from cases of rape in Brazil, but nevertheless it's still happening very widespread on the local culture, where a lot of women are finding themselves pregnant at a young age. So I met a wonderful lady who saved 3,000 lives from abortion in Brazil. That was a really life-changing experience. She's working in the slums in Rio. Her name's Doris Hippolito, a very, very inspiring woman. Is continuing to do the work of God in that country as well. So Australia, we've still got quite a number of campaigns across Australia. In Adelaide, our campaign leader, Mario Forte, he saved a couple of lives from abortion from their campaign there. They have 5,000 abortions in the state of South Australia, where Adelaide is based. About half of those taking place right by the abortion centre where they are. So it's really wonderful to meet local Christians who are doing the work of God on the local level. And what's so exciting about pro-life work is that you're really at the front front row of a culture war between a culture of life and a culture of death. And because of that, the effects of your work can be so powerful and have such a huge influence. There aren't many jobs in the world where you've got the opportunity to save lives on a daily basis and really to influence positively different countries. And I'm so excited with what God is doing through 40 Days for Life. We could have up to 15 countries join our campaign.
50, 50?
In the following next 12 months. That
Right.
really could happen. And
Right.
we've had a lot of inquiries from many different places. So it's a very simple campaign, but it's very effective as well. It can be implemented anywhere. And I've got no idea what God has next for our movement and the changes that likely to take place. The Planned Parenthood videos in America, had a reasonably large impact. Even the fact they didn't go viral on mainstream media, they had quite a big impact on public opinion about Planned Parenthood. So
Planned Parenthood.
A sign of hope for the future.
Planned Parenthood. Many moons ago, Margaret Sanger, she started this whole movement. It's all over the world now. It's Planned Parenthood headquarters are in every country, you mean? Do you know?
Planned Parenthood is not in every single country in the world. However, they do have a large impact. That they have about 60,000 affiliates around the world.
Wow.
And many cultures are very different to the United States. So
Right.
not every country has a family planning sort of clinic or setup or office there, but they are operating in many countries, and their influence has been very widespread. Their international headquarters is actually in London, and
Right.
they have many affiliate partners around the world. But many countries still have a traditional family as set up in their own country, and that really limits the influence on abortion in certain different countries. So many African countries, many Latin American countries are light years away from Western secular nations.
Right.
They have very different cultures. Abortion can also be widespread in those countries, but often it's not nearly as widespread because of the strong traditional family setup that they have in those countries.
See, the Western world now need to have ministries, preachers, pastors, priests to come to minister to us. We've been sending out missionaries all over the map to save everybody. But, it's got to come back to us now in North America, because we need missionaries. And 40 Days for Life, you are like the light of the world, working with Jesus and through Jesus and all that.
That's right. Well, we have a March for Life in England, and we have some Nigerian bishops who are going to speak at it this next year. And it's just an example of how we helped to evangelize Africa once upon a time, and now they need to come over and evangelize our country as well. Even my local parish priest here in England is from an African background as well. So it just shows, you're right, that you take the faith to another country, and sometimes we've got a bit of cultural amnesia with Christianity in Europe at the moment, that we needed to be reminded of many of the blessings and beauty of just central Christian teachings. And sometimes it could be other people from other countries
coming in to remind them. We're all human beings. We have to help each other, eh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So if we neglect ourselves and God, which we're starting to wake up here in trying to educate the world and praying for them as well. You see, praying is very powerful, And
certainly, our countries have turned away from God, and very much at large, both Britain and the United States are, in many ways, very secular countries, regardless of how many people go to church. That there is, very much people are living as if God didn't exist in many circumstances.
Taking him for granted.
Yeah,
really.
That's right. And I think with a spiritual renewal in the country, that would really also be very helping the pro-life movement in a big way, because when people turn back to God, I think they'll really understand, have a clear understanding of message of life and be able to live a culture of life a lot more authentically.
Do you work with the elderly as well as mental ill people who are being persecuted as well? Because I've heard in some countries they're killing off, like in Holland, euthanasia. Do you deal with that? Or just with babies?
So my job specifically is to help people organise 40 Days for Life campaigns and to serve 40 Days for Life, which is specifically focused on abortion.
Right.
However, the previous job that I did have was working for the Care Not Killing organisation, which is an umbrella group of organisations opposed to euthanasia. So I spent over a year working on the euthanasia debates prior to taking this job. My father joked that I was stopping people leaving the world and welcoming them in at the same time.
Right.
But certainly that's a huge challenge. It's a huge issue at the moment. We just voted to reject a change in the law in Britain. In California, they just voted to legalise assisted suicide as well. There's been a growing movement, especially with a growing elderly population among our demography.
Right.
We're going to see more and more challenges towards autonomy in a later age as well. So, euthanasia is a very grave problem, and I think it's, like abortion, it's very difficult to get rid of once it's introduced into the legislature of any country. So certainly it's a huge problem in Holland, in Belgium as well. They have very liberal laws there, have over 10,000 people dying. In the Netherlands, some people are afraid to go to the doctor because of the fear of euthanasia. And, it's brought a change in the culture. We've got a very strong hospice movement in the United Kingdom, and that really would be very strongly challenged by a culture that promotes killing the elderly as well through assisted suicide. So I really hope and pray that this plague never enters the United Kingdom. It would do unrepairable damage to the medical profession, to doctors, helping us do precisely the opposite of what their profession entails. So,
yeah, they're supposed to save to help people live a better life instead of this death culture killing them off. When people say with babies, newborn, they're not really human. They're not human. Once they're born, they are human. But when they're not, when they're pre-born, they're not human. They're not just declared as being alive. Do you get that?
Yeah, there's certainly a comparable between euthanasia and abortion. In many ways they're the fruits of the same tree.
Right.
And, when people dehumanize the vulnerable, that's when mentally it becomes logistically possible to discard with the vulnerable, the weak, and the needy in our societies. So, in many ways, the language has enabled people to think of unborn children as not human mentally, and I think that might not necessarily be the case with euthanasia, but they might think of them in a less human capacity. Once somebody lacks consciousness, once somebody has a terminal illness, the right to life doesn't necessarily correspond with people see quality of life as something more important than the right to life. And I think really it's an understanding of autonomy with moral relativism that helps create cultures where it becomes permissible to start killing people.
So when this trend of death culture, when did you see it start to really happen? In its 1970 or before that, or because of Margaret Singer, or before that her? How long has it been, this death culture in existence?
So, well, abortion was legalised in Britain in 1967 and the US in 1973. So, very much from the 1960s and 1970s, family structure in societies began to not be as strong, as well as a contraceptive culture was introduced in the 1960s as well with the invention of the pill. So,
right.
From that time, I think there's been a growing secularization, a rapid secularization in Western countries as well. And so all those factors combined, free love movement, certainly, a lot of the music in the 1960s and the 70s
Right.
really
Rebellious.
emphasised the change in culture.
Right.
From a culture of the family, a culture of life, and from the promotion of contraception, from the weakening of family ties, has led to an increasing abortion culture, in both our countries. And so that's only intensified over time, and we're very much strongly entrenched in a pro-abortion, pro-death mindset.
So we have to get together again. Just get back to family, the nucleus of, the center of the family. Get it back together, like, not be dysfunctional anymore. We need God back in our lives again.
That's right. I think renewal can happen through grassroots movements, through really a family culture that helps be re-established in our societies, and through grassroots efforts, through homeschooling, through just having really strong families that are a heart of our communities. That's where we can really challenge the pro-abortion mindset as well. That these things have to be in place before the culture changes, and the law can't change until the culture changes. When we see a cultural change, that's when we can see changes in the law take place. And I think a renewal of family life and renewal of Christianity, all these factors are going to help but when we see young people who are sick and tired of the divorce or abortion culture,
Right.
that they don't necessarily want to share those values themselves, that's when we see a change in hearts and minds as well.
Do you think that Darwinism had anything to do with changing people's minds about how precious human lives are?
Well, I don't think Darwinism is necessarily directly related to abortion or the pro-life movement in general. However, for many people's minds, the idea that we could have evolved from society brought a load of additional extra questions, which might have challenged people's faith. And I think there was a temptation to change the mindset in many people's ideas in terms of. But ultimately, as Christians, we believe that God created the world. He created man and woman, and actually, over time, the human race has developed. There isn't anything necessarily in the idea of evolution that is contrary to Christianity. However, some people's faith might have been challenged.
What are you doing now with 40 Days for Life? You're going touring. You've been on TV, radio as well. Being interviewed.
Yeah.
Throughout the world.
This autumn, I went to Slovenia, to Cameroon, to Fatima in Portugal, to Latvia and Romania as well, to visit the campaigns that we have in those countries. And I've been working on the countries who are interested in joining 40 Days for Life. It looks like we will have a campaign in Hong Kong for the first time. We should also have a campaign in Sao Paulo in Brazil, in Lima in Peru, in Venezuela. We've got a lot of campaigns in Mexico. We've had a campaign in Mexico for a year and a half now as well. We've also got other European countries, Holland, Rome, who are interested in a 40 Days for Life campaign. We've got a new campaign in Scotland as well. So registrations for the next campaign starting for the whole of December.
Right.
And so we've got a very early Lent campaign, February the 10th, 2016. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what God can do in and through the efforts of the people we have on board. So there's many interviews, radio, TV interviews, there's many promotions, there's many meeting the leaders, serving leaders, organising conferences, getting people together and celebrating, sharing their stories as well, hearing about many of the blessings that are taking place locally and encouraging people to pray and pray strongly too. So I'm so proud of so many of the 300 cities that take part in this initiative, and I'm in awe of what God is going to do next. There's many different places around the world that we haven't reached, and I would love to see great Christians help to organise campaigns in those countries which we haven't seen so far, as well as strengthen the existing campaigns that we do have. So I'm excited with what God is doing. He's working powerfully through many people, many people. He's helping change culture in many different places in the world, and I'm really excited to be part of that.
You know, my aunt, my late aunt, Aunt Anne, she was an abortionist. And she had done abortions many moons ago in the 60s and 70s in Toronto and Yorkville. I was the only one really who fought against it. I went to birthright. You know, I was Roman Catholic in those days. And I tried my best to, you know, with the Roman Catholic Church to stop it, but it just went out of control. How, you know, how to reach the kids, and they said, oh, this is my way now, we're not going to do it the family way. We got to do it, be ourselves and be free and all that sort. So that hits home with me, the abortion. I see both sides, why they did it and why it's so wrong to do it. Do you know personally of any abortionists who have been converted to leave the abortions?
Well, I've met Abby Johnson, and she came around the UK.
Right.
We did a tour together a couple of years ago. So her story is very, very powerful, and her story of conversion is very, very strong as well. I've read Bernard Nathanson's testimony of the hand of God, and seen the silent scream as well, and seen the story that he's had in terms of becoming pro-life. I've met many of the people working for the abortion industry in the United Kingdom as well. There's been debates here, we've had conferences, we've had discussions, we've debated on the media as well. So many different places where we've had interaction, and we'd love to see more doctors have a change of heart, change of mind. I know that many doctors have really a conscience issue about the practice, and we'd love to see many people, you know, it's through Christian witness that we can see hearts and minds change on this topic.
I'm beginning to question what happens in the mind of an abortionist, why they do it. Do you have any inkling as to why some of them are doing it? Do they feel hatred towards human life, or what? Do you know?
Well, there'll be a whole variety of reasons why. People might be an abortionist. You know, might be through ignorance or apathy. It might be that they've had an abortion experience themselves, and they mistakenly believe that they are helping women in difficult circumstances. It can be really for a whole variety of circumstances, and some of them mistakenly believe that they're actually helping people. For others, it's working through an existing abortion experience themselves, and for others, they're just, you know, they might be looking for work, or this might be the only possibility available. So it's for a whole range of reasons, and you know, I think sometimes ignorance, sometimes, you know, sometimes some of them don't have consciences in terms of what's happening, and we can't judge, we can't ever know the exact intentions or
May God forgive them.
circumstances that people find themselves in, but it's great when there is a change of mind, a change of heart from somebody who has a powerful conversion. I think there must be a temptation to despair when somebody has a change of mind, such a radical change of position,
Right.
a sudden realisation of what they've been doing. So, but it is amazing to see people actually come and become pro-life after performing abortions. And
with the ultrasound that they're doing now, people are noticing more what happens really to the baby, especially the nurses and staff who are helping the abortionists. I've heard of many nurses leaving, saying, this is what's really happening to the baby being killed by the abortionists, and they couldn't accept it, or they're overwhelmed and they had to leave.
That's right. Well, if you see Abby Johnson's experience, you know, she had a change of heart after witnessing an ultrasound-guided abortion for the first time, and she really came to a sudden realisation of what was happening. And I think, you know, for many people to see the reality of abortion, that can be the changing point, the tipping point that helps to change their minds. So that can be something very powerful that can happen. Very powerful that can happen that somebody witnesses witnesses an abortion experience or a recording of an abortion, and that could be, a significant way. We live in a very visual culture that people change their minds. So, many social reform movements, it's been through visual imagery that's helped create change of heart and mind in people's in the public opinion as well.
I'm glad they have ultrasound now. Some abortions clinics or Planned Parenthood don't want people to see the ultrasound of their own babies. They fight against that, saying it's just a blob. It's going to ruin your life. You don't know where you're going to be going after this. If you get rid of it now, it solves all your problems. And right after the abortion, the mother, I don't know if there's a lot of suicide rates or not because of it. So.
Yes, certainly. With ultrasound, it's possible to see the humanity of the unborn child. I've heard stories of abortion doctors in England who haven't shown the ultrasound pictures to women, knowing that they're more likely to have an abortion if they don't see the pictures.
If they change their minds and they don't want to.
Yeah, that's right. So the more people we can help people to be aware of the humanity of the unborn child. If they, most people who see ultrasound pictures are likely to keep their children as well. You're right as well that suicide rates are more likely for those who've had abortion experiences. There's a number of academic studies that show that position as well. But it'd be wonderful people working before abortions are happening to help people in crisis pregnancies, and also afterwards as well. People who've had abortion experiences, the more that we can help lead them to a personal conversion, to have a change of heart and mind, to be truly sorry of what's happened, and to find forgiveness and healing after the event as well.
Do you have a lot of abortionists in England itself?
Well,
how about Ireland?
There's about 190,000 abortions a year.
Shoot.
And there are two major abortion organisations, Mary Stopes and BPAS. They both operate in the United Kingdom. They've got about 20 centres each, and then we also have a whole range of hospitals around the country as well. So those are the locations for most of the abortions, and it's business is very much flourishing for them. They have a large list of people who want to have an abortion every single day, and it's a flourishing business for them in the United Kingdom.
It's money, money situation. They want the money. They're greedy. To me, I think they're greedy. They want the money. They don't care about the woman. They can't.
Yeah, well, certainly, in England we have they are registered charities that are established we have most abortions are paid for by the taxpayer in the United Kingdom. So it's slightly different to the United States, where Planned Parenthood is a much more commercial organisation that money is much more at the heart of their business and their operations. In the UK that is too, but it's just that the taxpayer is likely to pay for the abortion, which could be anywhere between £500 and £1,600. That's equivalent to just under $1,000 to probably $4,000 for each abortion. So it can be can be very lucrative in many ways, but they've established themselves as non-profit organisations, and that really helps them to get government funding.
Question. We have had over 57 million babies since 1973 aborted here in the United States. I wonder how many countries disappear that have that many abortions. How much, that many children killed off in the United States and Canada. I hate to ask how many children throughout the world has been killed off. I'm afraid to find that out. Is it in the billions?
Well, if you look historically, there are more human persons who've been killed by abortion than all the wars in history combined. Certainly, the abortion rate in the 20th century has been about 40 million abortions a year. So it's been a really astronomically high level for many years. It's something that's happened throughout history. It's accounts of abortion from 2,000 years ago to methods of several hundred years ago. So, but it's really become mainstream, notably in the last 50 years. Certainly Russia was the first country to legalise abortion in 1917, and many different countries are in different positions as well. Not every country has a pro-abortion laws or culture as well. So it seems absolutely staggering, the statistics, and quite horrifying the scale of destruction that's happened
It's like
over the last few decades. But that's not necessarily a reason to despair. It can be a cause for hope that God can change the culture into something more beautiful as a result of many of the tragedies that have taken place already.
That is why Jesus came into the world, to save us, to be the light of the world.
Yeah.
And that's what we are, his instruments, to have him work through us with the Holy Spirit to save our fellow man, through Christ himself,
Yeah, well, God's still working powerfully in the world today, and there's plenty of causes for hope. There's lots of great things that are going on, and I think the central question is whether we cooperate with God's will to do what he wants to accomplish in and through our lives as well. So I think there's a lot of good to be done in the pro-life movement. There's a lot of causes for hope, and a lot of blessings that God can do in and through many of the faithful, many of the faithful, and that's the plan that he has for our lives. And it doesn't matter how large a problem there is in society, even if we can just have a small impact, we can still be doing his will, even if we're just seeing a few lives saved from abortion. I've been lucky enough to meet some of the babies that have been spared from abortion as a result of our efforts.
Amen.
And it's a beautiful experience, and I wish any pro-lifer to have that experience, to fully recognise that it is literally a human life that is involved when you're involved in a situation of changing somebody's mind, and that's a pretty incredible experience to have. And I think people really fully realise the scale and the impact of this crisis, and if they can act in a corresponding manner, then that's when we can help the culture just change one step at a time.
Sir, we're almost over in this interview.
Yeah.
Aye, we did talk a lot, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right.
You bet. I'd like to thank you. Can you stay on after the camera turns off? I'd like to thank you, sir.
No problem at all. Yeah.
For coming on to my show. And you are a blessing as well. Throughout the world, 40 Days for Life may become strong and helping our babies, praying for them and counseling them, the families, which is also as well wonderful. So I'd like to thank you, sir. God bless.
Excellent.
And we will get in touch with you some other time. We can have you on my show again.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So, ciao, ciao. This is Patty Hunter saying goodbye from Fort Wayne, Indiana. This is Patty's page, and we'll see you next week.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my heart and every dream. Don't let this time apart give in to all our fears. God will keep us close from up above. So until we meet again, Godspeed, my love. God is with us always.